check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.
If it's misaligned small, that's just the design of the vehicle. For diagnostic procedure of this joint, of the shaft, I should say. Hi there, my name's Jackson and welcome back to SMC Garage. Today's episode is going to be all about U-joints. So I recently discovered that all 4 of my U-joints are bad in my van here. So the 2 front U-joints in the front drive shaft and the 2 U-joints in the rear drive shaft were both bad. So this is going to be a 2-part video. One of these videos is going to be about how I diagnose this. The second video is going to be all about how I actually was able to change them over. And it's going to be a good tutorial on how to replace U-joints on your vehicle if you ever need to going forwards.
It sound right, boys.
So the first step in proper diagnostic procedure is most likely a test drive. You're looking to see if you can replicate the concern. I was feeling a vibration. I was hearing a little bit of a humming noise coming from somewhere in the rear end and then also somewhere in the front. And I know that I just put new wheels and tires on and these are perfectly balanced. So that's kind of the first starting point you want to look at. Next, when you're diagnosing a vibration, you want to kind of make it easy on yourself. You know, is it something that's chassis related, interior related, something not tightened up properly? Let's look at those. Let's also look at things that are easy to access. So wheels and tires, easy to access. Drivetrain, mostly easy to access. We're talking about drive shafts, axles. Kind of my next step from there would be, okay, is it a wheel bearing noise? So on a test drive, you're looking for wheel bearing noise. You want to put more load on the wheel bearing. So you're going to be almost making an S pattern when you're driving. You're loading each side and seeing if that noise or vibration gets worse. So I didn't see any of that. I didn't hear any of that. I had appropriate adjustment in my front hubs and then my rear axles. The bearings in there are okay. So next I moved on to my U-joints. That's the next easiest thing to access. So I'll show you this test later. I went underneath, the test confirmed it. I had bad U-joints. That's how I diagnose where to replace them. So of course that may not be where the entire vibration symptom is coming from. Of course there's many things that can be causing a vibration in a drivetrain. But start out with the easiest things and then you can eliminate them off your list and go into the more complex things. So if you were to replace the U-joints and your vibration and your humming was still there, then you maybe be suspicious of, you know, a final drive issue. So your rear or front differential, you know, we don't know. It could be a little more complex than that. But this video is just going to focus on the U-joint. Now, most likely these issues with drivetrains will show up at higher speeds or higher RPMs. I say RPMs, I'm talking RPM, so revolution of the drive shaft, not of your engine. But again, a vibration can be from the engine as well. So it's important to put yourself in different positions in the vehicle. So maybe if you have someone else driving, you can sit in different positions in the vehicle and see if you can isolate to see where that vibration is coming from. So another symptom of a bad U-joint could be when you're placing the vehicle in reverse or drive, just because as that drive shaft turns, you're taking up the play that has been created by a worn out U-joint. So as I put it in drive or reverse, I don't hear a clunk right now, but in your vehicle, that could be a symptom. So another thing that you can do is just a visual inspection on your vehicle. So if you're hearing a vibration or feeling a vibration that's kind of, you know, close to the speed of your drive shaft, I'd start looking at maybe you have a bent drive shaft. So maybe this is like banana shaped, or you have these balance weights here where this assembly is balanced. If those weights are missing, that could also cause a vibration. So sometimes these shafts actually do get dented as well. So a dent or a bend or any type of damage could mean that you have to replace your drive shaft. So another part of a visual inspection that you can do is just looking at your U-joints. So seeing if there's a ton of grease that's just been blown out of it. So maybe these seals are bad. So water and debris has gotten in. You can also check if there's any just visual damage to it. If this U-joint has any broken caps, could be that the flange is broken, anything like that. Another thing to mention, so if you don't have any grease in these U-joints, another symptom could be a squeak at lower speeds. If you start hearing a squeak, that's actually these bearings inside this U-joint, little needle roller bearings running dry, and they're actually squeaking. So that could be a symptom as well.
So in testing U-joints, there's one simple test you can do, is grab the companion flange that's either out of the transfer case or differential, and then grab your drive shaft, and you can actually hold one and start to spin the other. If you feel any play in between the joints, that typically means it's a fail. So it's difficult to see on camera, but I can feel this. Either I'm holding the flange or I'm rotating the drive shaft or vice versa. I can feel some play in there. Now, if you really wanted to see if there's excessive play and you're not quite sure, you can grab a pry bar in here and either stick it in here or in here and kind of move it back and forth just a tiny bit, not a whole lot of pressure. Of course, if you put a ton of pressure on it, it'll move either way, but just light pressure, just like this, and you can see it move.
Here at our rear drive shaft, you can see that this one's pretty small. That's just the design of the vehicle. Now this one is a little more complex than normal vehicles. This one actually has an expansion joint in the middle. You know, you may see that on your vehicle, you may not. It just depends on the design. Okay, I want to stop right here because I noticed something while editing the footage that is a big issue that I want to point out. So take a look at this drive shaft here. We see how the yokes on the drive shaft are actually at different positions. With a two-piece drive shaft, these yokes actually need to be phased. And let me explain why. So your drive shaft basically goes through 4 different cycles when you have a drive shaft with U-joints. So because a U-joint is basically 4 points of contact, it speeds up and slows down during one rotation. It has an acceleration and a deceleration pattern. So actually the speed of your drive shaft is actually doing this. It's a curve that goes like up and down and up and down. This speed change is actually increased by the angle of the shaft. So if the angle of the shaft is quite severe, the actual speed up and slow down of this joint, of the shaft, I should say, during one revolution is actually increased. So we don't get something like that in a constant velocity joint or a CV joint that actually stays the same speed no matter what angle. So this is a phenomenon unique to a drive shaft with a U-joint. When talking about phasing, what I'm talking about is basically, it's pretty much timing your drive shaft. So if you have 2 joints on either end of the shaft and you don't line them up or time them, those fluctuations in speed are not going to line up. So suddenly the drive shaft's going to be fighting itself. That will cause a vibration. If it's misaligned a little bit, maybe you won't notice it, but if it's misaligned a lot, you will definitely notice it. That will cause a vibration. Now suddenly you have 2 different speeds trying to run through the same shaft, and that's a recipe for disaster. So now let's talk about driveline angles. So in this case, specifically the driveline angle between the rear differential and the transfer case. So basically the drive component, the transfer case, or it could be a transmission or even a carrier bearing, and the driven component, which is the rear axle. So driveline angle is really, really important to take into account when you're looking at diagnosing U-joint issues. You need to have a driveline angle because there's little tiny needle roller bearings inside your U-joints. And these needle roller bearings only spin when there is an angle in the drive shaft. So for example, if your drive shaft is perfectly straight, so either you've lowered your vehicle, whether intentionally or not, and your drive shaft now has no angle, those needle roller bearings will no longer roll. What they'll do is they'll just sit there inside the cap and vibrate, creating little divots inside the cap on the trunnion, so the cross, that will cause a vibration and a humming noise. This phenomenon is known as Brunelling, so where little divots are put inside of your U-joint. So when you're diagnosing U-joint issues, have a look at service information for your vehicle and see what those driveline angles should be. Now if they're way out to lunch, then maybe you should be looking at
sagging spring issue, or maybe you've lowered or raised your vehicle too much, affecting those drive angles too much. And another component that can fail is maybe a transmission mount or a carrier bearing where it's actually dropped or sagged, and now you've changed your driveline angle. So what I recommend doing if your U-joints are failing like more than usual, I'd take a look at maybe a ride height issue, or maybe starting to look at the mounts on the drive component. So whether your transfer case or transmission mount or even carrier bearing has affected the driveline angle. Or even your pinion angle is incorrect. So maybe your axle has shifted, maybe facing your pinion up or down, something like that would affect the driveline angle. Again, there's an ideal angle for every single drive shaft. Just make sure to check your service information about what that may be. Too much angle can prematurely wear the U-joints. Not enough angle can also do the same. So it's important to find that happy medium.
So that's how you diagnose a bad U-joint. So thanks again for watching. I really appreciate it. If you like what you see, please leave a like or a comment or subscribe. I greatly appreciate that. I look forward to making the next video here coming up pretty soon, and I hope that you tune in for that as well. So once again, my name is Jackson for SMC Garage. Thanks again and have a great day.